When we look at the earliest chapters of human civilization, we expect to see monuments built to immortalize a single ruler. The pyramids of Giza show us a world where extreme wealth and labor were funneled upward to a divine king. We see this pattern repeating across the ancient world. Ziggurats in Mesopotamia reflect a steep social ladder of elites, priests, and slaves. For a long time, historians assumed this kind of harsh, top-down hierarchy was the only way to organize a complex society. This map shows the Indus Valley, or Harappan civilization. Thriving around 2600 BCE along the Indus River and stretching deep into modern-day Pakistan and India, it occupied an area larger than ancient Egypt and Sumer combined. Yet, across this massive territory, the archaeological record reveals a striking anomaly. Despite their highly advanced technology and sprawling urban centers, the Harappans left behind zero evidence of kings, royal palaces, or severe social stratification. In other ancient ruins, excavators uncover lavish tombs filled with gold and jewels. In Harappan sites, the material culture looks remarkably different. The artifacts left behind, like this standard, unadorned clay vessel, are predominantly utilitarian. There are no grand mausoleums holding the remains of a ruling class. There are no massive storehouses dedicated to a single royal family. The architecture simply does not support a society where a wealthy elite monopolized the region's resources. A bustling grid this size implies an immense level of coordination, but it raises the question of how millions of people standardized their industries and cities without a central authority dictating orders from the top. To understand the Indus Valley, we have to throw out the traditional lens of rulers and subjects. When we look at the modern archaeological and genetic data, a completely different model of human organization emerges. This is a site plan of Mohenjo-Daro. It reveals an extreme level of urban planning. The streets are perfectly aligned to the cardinal directions: north, south, east, and west, intersecting at right angles to form a strict grid, deliberately separating residential sectors from public buildings. Across this vast grid, and across thousands of miles of Harappan territory, the building materials are mathematically uniform. The baked bricks used to construct these walls all follow an exact, standardized ratio. You do not see massive, sprawling estates interrupting this uniformity for a ruling class. Instead of monuments to individuals, their engineering prowess went toward public infrastructure. They built complex, covered drainage systems and sanitation networks. Structures like the brick-lined Great Bath of Mohenjo-Daro point to a society heavily focused on communal well-being and public hygiene. Their industrial output was equally decentralized. Excavations of these standard, well-equipped household foundations reveal that the manufacturing of trade goods, like beadmaking and metalwork, happened in small workshops inside regular residential homes, rather than in massive, state-controlled factories. A highly standardized civic infrastructure, paired with decentralized household-level production, indicates a society driven by trade and communal cooperation. The citizens were engineering their own functional environments, rather than performing forced labor for a singular ruler. To manage this sprawling, decentralized network of merchants and craftspeople, the Harappans relied on a highly specific tool, the Indus script, found on small square stamp seals featuring animal figures and symbols. These seals measured just a few centimeters across. They were used to press tags into clay to secure packaged goods for trade. Yet researchers have identified over 400 unique signs within this script, packed into these tiny utilitarian spaces. Because we have no bilingual translation stone, a debate persisted for decades over whether these symbols represented a true spoken language or were simply random religious icons. Recently, computer scientists applied probabilistic analysis to the sequences of these symbols to test their underlying structure. This chart plots the block entropy, or conditional randomness, of the Indus script. When researchers from the University of Washington compared the sequences on the seals to various data types, the Indus script clustered perfectly within the range of modern natural languages. It sits far away from the predictable rigidity of a computer code and far from completely random noise. The data confirms this was a functional logosyllabic language. It was a practical tool used by merchants to track inventory and coordinate a flat, expansive society, not a mechanism for kings to carve declarations of conquest into stone. For generations, historians operated under an ingrained bias. They assumed that a society this complex must have been imported. Early theories argued the Harappans were seeded by migrants from the Middle East, or that their civilization was eventually wiped out by an invading force from the north. Looking at the latest reports, modern genetic analysis tells a different story. By sequencing DNA extracted from a Harappan cemetery at the Rocky Gari site, researchers found that the ancient DNA results completely reject the theory of steppe pastoral or ancient Iranian farmers as source of ancestry. The data shows strong genetic continuity. The Harappans were an indigenous population with an unbroken lineage tracing directly back to local hunter-gatherers who transitioned into early agricultural communities. We can track this unbroken line from early settlements in Mehrgar, around 7000 BCE, expanding outward across the entire Indus basin as the civilization matured, and eventually flowing directly into the genetics of modern South Asian populations today. The Indus Valley represents an independent, homegrown evolution of complex urban life. This social structure emerged locally, proving that their unique organization was a direct internal response to the needs of the region. When we assemble the data, the decentralized cities, the utilitarian script, and the indigenous origins, we see a society characterized by a lack of extreme social stratification. This forces us to reevaluate the basic assumptions we hold about human history. The long-held belief that civilization requires a heavy-handed ruling class to function is contradicted by the physical evidence of the Indus Valley. It demonstrates that human beings are entirely capable of building massive, technologically sophisticated, and highly organized urban networks through cooperation, rather than relying on severe inequality. The ultimate legacy of the Harappans is the scientific proof they left behind. They demonstrated that an empire without a king could organize millions of lives and thrive for centuries.